and most kids now.
You're alive.
All right. Thank you. We are here. It is, what day is it?
April 30th.
Wednesday.
April 30th, and it's Wednesday, and we're here to hear about the crash program and name, and thank you for coming.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. My name is Mandy Shatney. I am the data section manager in the Operations and Safety Bureau at V-Trans. All right. I have a really short presentation for you, and then I think my plan is to pop into some websites to show you some cool stuff that our group has put together. So first and foremost, I thought I'd go through some of our fatal crash information. I know last year, I think I did a comparison from 23 to 24, or 22 to 23. So I'll do a similar thing with 23 to 24. Fatalities fell about 10, or fell 10 from 23 to 24. So that was really good to see.
Can you
Always-
speak up?
No, but I think, yeah, if you have it in the packet.
Yeah, but I need a mic.
It's-
Meg.
Yeah,
I know,
it's
very,
small.
very,
I'm sorry.
no,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Need longer options.
I can
Wow.
get you larger versions of these too, if you would like to see it. We do pull these things together and send them out on a weekly basis to a large group of people. There's even media that get these. So sometimes they'll put this out on their broadcasts, but pretty quickly it talks this the chart on, or the chart on the, well, it's my left, so maybe you're
It's
right.
on my right.
Okay, perfect. Talks about, it just compares the numbers of over the last 5 years plus the current year. We did see about the same number of double fatality crashes as we did the year before. The operator suspected of driving under the influence of alcohol only did drop. The number of drivers suspected of being under the influence of drugs only dropped as well.
By a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, 2025 is only.
oh yeah, no,
I'm
that's,
sorry, I was
that's-
looking at 20.
oh yeah, no, I'm talking like from 23 to 24.
Okay.
And then the alcohol and drugs number did increase. So just keeping a note of that, that poly drug is still a problem. And then cannabis was about the same as it was last year. We saw more speeding related fatal crashes. We saw a slight drop in suspended licenses and fatal crashes. Junior operators did increase. And let's see, older drivers decreased pretty significantly, as well as our motorcyclist fatalities. So last year, I'll talk about that really quick on the next one, actually. So I put together this just as a quick overview. Overall fatalities decreased by 14%, which is nice. So that was that number of 10. Impaired fatalities also decreased by 22%. Our unbelted fatalities decreased as well. The two things that I want to point out are our speed related fatalities increased by 50% and our pedestrian fatalities increased by 20%. The pedestrian fatalities, I'll note that was an increase of 1. So in 2023, we had 5 pedestrians that were killed in crashes, and then we had 6 last year. So
Do you include bicyclists and pedestrians?
not in that same number, so they're separated out.
Go ahead.
So I have a bunch of questions. So just going back, it's,
Yeah,
and
do
you
you
can
want me to
stop
go?
me.
What?
Whatever you
Go
want.
back?
No, no,
Well-
we got plenty of time
I-
this morning.
Good. So the cumulative totals are interesting, but
Yeah.
I would really like to see, because there's probably a seasonality to this, right? Is summer more dangerous or winter?
Yes. There is a seasonality to it. Summer is one of our higher numbers, and you can see in that graph there where things start to kind of ramp up around May through September.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you had a graph that had the months, but then instead of showing the cumulative, just show it.
Yep.
Each month, then we could see which year, like, are we getting better? Are we getting worse?
So I will show you something
Okay,
on one of our websites where you can see that.
okay.
So we'll
And I would just like to know also what y'all do with this data, because you probably know in Europe, crashes are reducing.
Mhm.
And especially pedestrian deaths are reducing. And one of the, people are trying to figure out why, what's the deal with America, or they were before all our stuff started now. But what they thought was happening is it's a combination of distracted driving, because we have our phones and we Americans need to know we feel like we need to know the news immediately after it happens.
Mhm.
So we can't put down our phones and just drive. And our cars allow us to have that, because we don't have, all of our cars pretty much are automatics. And you can't drive a stick shift and look at your phone pretty much. So, and that's in Europe, there's many more, standard cars.
Everybody in Britain drives with a standard.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know, it's hard to, so that's a reason, and then our cars are getting really big, especially at the front, and you can survive a crash as a pedestrian or bicyclist if it's a smaller car at the front, and if it's, I think, 45 or 40 miles per hour, or maybe 25, there's a number where if you get
There's a
hit,
formula.
you're
Yeah.
done. So I would just like to hear about those kinds of things.
Our cars are much bigger.
Yes.
Yes.
And they're getting bigger
Yes.
even.
Okay. I can talk a little bit about what we do with the
Okay.
data, as we go through this, if you would like, do you want me to talk to it now or?
Or whatever. I just wanted to know what I was interested in.
Okay.
And why don't we go through what you've got? And
Yeah.
we've got plenty of time. We'll ask questions.
Okay. As I noted, motorcyclist fatalities, decreased by 67%. That was at 18, down to 6. Last year was one of the highest since we started tracking this number. So, I'm happy to see that it decreased back to, a lower number for sure. Some of these are just things that we put together for different reasons. And so again, back to what the data is used for. We provide some of this data to our state highway safety office, and they provide grants out to law enforcement and for educational purposes. So that data will be used for that. And they can speak way more to all the different things that they grant the data for. But all of this data is at their disposal, and we provide them with information. I wanted to show the impaired driving. It did decrease a smidge this year, or in 2024, but the overall trend is still increasing over time from 2014. Unbelted percentage of motor vehicle occupants has come down the last couple of years, but again, we're still over that 50% of our fatalities that have the opportunity to wear a seatbelt that are not. They're choosing not to. In the top left, I believe it's your left, not mine. I've broken down alcohol only, alcohol with Delta-9, alcohol with other drugs, which includes Delta-9. Again, that's looking like it's coming down a little bit. You guys can't see this little window here that's in my way. But we're still seeing that over 50% of our fatalities involve an impaired driver. So another thing that we're really focused on. And then the last one just breaks down the restraint safety equipment used. So we can break this down into a lot of different categories. We're looking at unbelted, belted, whether it's a driver or passenger. We also have a line in there for improper belt use or child restraint. We do see that occasionally, the improper child restraints. Motorcyclist ATV, that's another one we track, and then vulnerable users. And back to Senator Brown's question, we do break that down by pedestrians and bicyclists. So we did have 2 bicyclists last year that were killed in crashes. Right. Just looking quickly at the 5-year rolling average of fatalities, again, we did drop by 10 fatalities last year, but that trend line is still up. We dropped off 2019 out of this 5-year average. 2019 had, I think, 47 fatalities, so that's why that still is trending up. So hopefully 25 is another lower year and we can start to see that trend line switch gears. All of this data is shown on our SHSP website, which my team built a few years ago when we rolled out the 22 to 26 strategic highway safety plan. So I'm going to show you that in a minute, and that is where we can drop into that like monthly comparison and things like that. And then, well, actually, I'll do it now. Because that is the end of my presentation. So I wanted to do this instead. All right. So we built this to come out and live with at the same time as our 2022 to 2026 strategic highway safety plan. But the nice thing is that we can look at current year data and see where we're at too. So I'm going to click on impaired driving.
It's not showing us.
Oh, it's not showing it off. I have to reshare my screen. Don't I? Thank you for telling me. Let's see. Oh, it's still thinking, so good timing. Okay. So all of these are Power BI dashboards. So we'll pop in here. All of this information is based on the critical emphasis areas that have been identified in the strategic highway safety plan. There's, oh, I should have wrote that down. I think there's 9. But impaired driving, it explains what it is on the left side of the screen, or maybe you're right. Impaired driving shows again like that kind of trend line over time. We can actually click on 2024 only, and it will now tell us where 2024 sits as far as those fatalities go in different counties. Again, we can choose a specific county. So we could say, let's just look at Washington County. And I'll show you that there were 4 fatalities in 2024 that were impaired driving related.
What's the highest county
For impaired driving?
for, I was thinking highway fatalities.
Okay.
Must be Chittenden.
Well, I was thinking that, but then I'm thinking it's so congested. Traffic moves slower.
So,
Maybe not, but
Well, there's so many more people in Chittenden.
yeah,
Right.
more traffic.
To me, the most intense section of highway is between Montpelier and Burlington. It's noticeably different, because I used to drive from Brattleboro to Winooski a lot, so that's a pretty far
So,
distance. Well, just on highways, like at 91 and 80.
oh, okay.
But it's such a difference in behavior. It feels like South Florida between, it really does. It's noticeable
That's what most of the rest of us think about it.
that it feels like South Florida.
Especially in January.
No, but just the behavior, it's not Vermonty, like people aren't signaling kind of what
Sure, it's not southern New England.
I don't know,
What
maybe, yeah.
do you think, Pat?
what's that?
Did the interstate between here and Colchester is more like Boston?
Well, the closer you get to Chittenden County, I hate to say it, the crazier people get.
Right, but it's the entrance here from Montpelier.
Yeah.
It's really that section that it's noticeably different.
So I'm sorry.
Okay.
So we can come back to, well, that did not do what I wanted it to do. Darn it.
Is the 1920, is that lower because of COVID? People weren't driving as much?
So 2020 actually had more fatalities than 2019. Our fatalities actually increased during COVID. Lower traffic, higher speeds, a lot more driver behavior issues on our roads than, and maybe that's partly because of the lower traffic, but
Do you count suicides? Because my understanding is that a single driver hitting something like a tree is very often a suicide. And we have such low numbers that could make a difference.
Awesome.
that's a good question, but without. So the investigation that law enforcement does would figure that out most of the time,
Maybe.
but not always.
It's hard to,
You're
if
right.
they don't say that, but it typically is.
Yeah.
Is my understanding.
Yeah, that's a good question, but it's also hard to prove. There's a lot of things, right, that are happening on our roads that are hard to prove, like
Right.
even the distracted driving you brought up. Unless it's seen that the person was using their phone or they admit to it, it's really difficult to prove.
Can't you get phone records?
You can, but it does require a warrant for the phone.
You know what? You can get those records online. I bet you can just pay for it because a lot of things that you have to get a warrant for, you can buy on the internet.
It's pretty wild,
Yeah.
a little
That
scary.
doesn't mean.
That's scary.
It should make you scary. That's why I'm telling you.
So this covers all of the CEAs. It doesn't do like that broad stroke of all of the state for all fatalities. So that's something I'm hoping to expand this data action plan, the data evaluation section to do. But this was really truly meant to cover those, all right, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There were 10 CEAs. So what I want to do also from my presentation is show you a couple of other websites that we have done. Let's see if it pops it open for you without me switching. Yeah, perfect. All right. So we did the last 2 years, we've done a 2022 and a 2023 vehicle crashes story map showing a summary of all crashes occurring in the state of Vermont in 2023. One of my team found this really interesting picture of a car that ran into a V-Trans truck.
In a snowstorm.
In a
That's why you're
snowstorm.
supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sad.
So we kind of pop down through this. It's just a scroll. It's on our website and I'll show you that in a few minutes, but it's basically, we break this down in a few different ways. So on average in Vermont, 20 crashes happen every day and 6 people are injured. 1 person dies every 5 days. So that's based on the 2023 numbers. So
So is that once every 5 days? What,
it's an
I would
average.
think there would be more deaths in the winter.
True, but we took all fatalities and divided it by the number of days. So it's just an average, like just kind of coming up. I think some of the federal stuff does that too. Will like
So-
NHTSA will.
So
But stuff out like that.
what's the peak months for death?
It depends. I've always, because I've been doing this for 25 years and I've been doing the FARS work or the fatality reporting since 2010. I've always thought September was one of our highest months, which is kind of interesting because it's like at the end of summer, beginning of fall, but
Cause school.
yeah, and that's interesting because it's not kids, but there is that back to school
New
like,
patterns.
yeah, new patterns.
That's interesting because I would have thought, like December.
Yeah,
Because, the times when you get that in between weather, when
Mhm.
the windshields are and December is the time we get a lot of visitors for that come here that as tourists that don't always have snow tires on.
And I think generally people do slow down when the weather is inclement, right? So I think that's part of it, that most people are trying to like do the right thing and slow down and clear the windshields.
I see a lot of people with SUVs that don't have good tires on that have come from south of here that drive pretty fast.
Yes, I've seen that too.
Like Wyndham County or something.
That's
Oh, wait.
how I know.
So we broke this down a little bit, by different ways. So let's see, how many people died in each year in Vermont's roads? So 71 people died on our roads in 2023. As I said, 24 dropped down to 59. So we're gonna probably do another story map for 24. But it takes a few months after the end of the year to get all of the crash reports finalized and submitted. So we're in that space now where we've got all the crash data and we've got to do the work now to put one of these up. But I just thought this was a really nice visual of what we do with the data.
Yeah.
So the number of fatalities had been increasing through 23. The number of crashes reported to us have been decreasing. So we've been working with law enforcement to figure out a better way to get that data in. Actually, go ahead.
No, finish your.
I was just gonna say, we actually worked with the Secretary of Transportation and the Commissioner of Public Safety to put a letter out to law enforcement a couple months ago to just go through like just a reminder of what this data is used for, the fundings that we get because of their reporting, and that was very well received. And my team followed that up with an email basically to all of law enforcement saying, hey, we're available to do some training, to talk to you about crashes again. And that has resulted in about 30 trainings with law enforcement across the state. So they're very receptive. So I'm feeling really good about our interaction with them, and hopefully we can get some of these crashes reported that we should be getting.
Good. How do you look at like interstate versus roads like 5 and 7 and then town roads?
Yeah, we can. I don't know if that's in this specific story
Or-
map, but yeah.
Like which are more like I usually think that like the 5 and 10, you know, those state roads with 2 lanes. I feel less safe on that than I do on an interstate. But I don't know if that's accurate. It would be good to know.
It depends on the road. There's more room for error depending, like on an interstate in a lot of cases, in Vermont at least, maybe not in another state, but because there's less traffic, right? Like if you think about, I just drove down to Georgia not too long ago, and those 3-4 lane highways packed with traffic.
Oh, yeah.
There's not so much room for error there, but in Vermont, we do have a little bit more room for error.
So they do on the sides now and sometimes in the middle, the little ribbing, in the pavement.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do they ever compare your information to that? Like,
For those types of projects, like when they put out
The rumble strip.
the rumble
the rumble strip?
Yeah.
rumble strips, rumble stripes. there's a
Yeah,
couple.
they put those out. And how do we know that they're working if there isn't showing up in your data? And do they compare that to? I've still got people that don't like the rumble strips,
What?
and it would be.
I love the rumble strip.
I know, they're awesome.
Unless your house is right next.
Well,
If your house is next to
Yeah.
it, you don't like them.
yeah.
But it would be interesting to be able to have something in data that I could, when
Yeah.
people do say, I don't like them near my house.
Right. In the crash data, we do collect left the roadway, right? So if there's a lane departure crash and we know that we can overlay that rumble strip or stripe data with cross center line, ran off road. So we do collect that, and we have used the crash data for those types of projects when they're looking at projects they do look at the crash data to see what's going on in those areas, so.
So in the overall though, where they've done that, is there any data that we can look at?
Yes,
So it's been 10 years, but 10 years ago, they did the rumble strip on 104 in Cambridge, between Cambridge and Fairfax. And the complaints were so much that they took it out. So it would be just interesting to have any data around that.
Mhm.
So when people bring it up, I could, or other people could say, the reason they did it was because of this.
right. Yes, we can easily run some reports and look at cross center line crashes in those in a specific area. I don't know if I'm sure you're familiar with Route 4 in the Hartford
Mhm.
area. We had, I think it was like 4 or 5 fatalities within a couple of weeks on that road. And they put together a team and they basically decided to put centerline there, and that those fatalities stopped immediately. So it does work. I mean, it does force people to self-correct, but again, like we can easily look at, if you have an area that you're specifically interested in, we can look at whether or not there are the rumbles and tell you what we have for crashes. Are you thinking like a before and after type study?
Before and after, or, just any indication, because,
Mhm.
if you do live next to a road with rumble strips that aren't on the interstate, people don't like them near their house.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could just do a comparison of just places with rumble strips and places without, and see if there's more.
Right.
Or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that.
And I hope probably New Hampshire does it too. Oh, I know they do have rumble strips, but they probably have done studies and they would have a bigger.
I think I have seen those studies.
Yeah, I'm sure there's study. We haven't done any analysis in Vermont on it specifically that I'm aware of.
But they'd be helpful.
Yeah, it's just helpful. It could, because when you go into groups, particularly with people that live near there, why are they doing that? I hate them. And, they make noise and I can hear them at night when the trucks go down through.
Yeah.
And, I think we all understand, that it's for safety,
Correct.
but the numbers to back that up would be, important stuff, I think, to have.
Okay.
I assume it matters on the width of the road, like how close, because I think if you're in a big truck and it's a narrow road and there's rumble strip, you just kind of add to that, like, you're more likely to run over that.
Yep.
And I know in Route 2, they didn't do it in bonus houses. Like they did it for a while, they took a break.
Mhm.
And on some of the turns, because when you're making a turn and there's a house there, you're more likely to cross the
Okay.
line a little bit.
Yeah.
So it seemed like they didn't do it in places specifically because of the houses.
Right.
I think they've learned over time.
Yeah.
I absolutely think they've learned over time, but it's always nice to have backup to be able to say, yeah, well,
And I think the center line is more important than other than.
Yeah, I mean, head on.
Yeah.
I have one question.
well, I think that's probably right on state highways. I think on the interstate,
Yeah.
people falling asleep is
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, go ahead.
On reports, I drift right down toward unbelted deaths. I don't know if I've talked to you or talked to Tanya a while back. They were being listed really heavily for a while. They're like unknown,
Mhm.
13 unknown. I said that's impossible. You had was it you I talked to?
I don't remember. It
unknown
could have been.
You're saying it's
But
possible that they.
meaning-
Yeah, they didn't know if they were belted or not, and it was really the number. There's always a couple, but it was really high, and there was a reason for that. And she said they load them in later or something.
Yes.
The reports aren't in. Is that
Correct.
That's right.
Yeah, so the weekly email that I mentioned earlier with that
Yeah.
little chart.
Yeah.
that comes from an initial notification that we get from law enforcement telling us that there was a fatal crash. And then later we get the actual crash report, and that's a lot of times they do the notification so soon before they do much investigation.
Okay,
So we tend to get a lot of unknowns, even a lot of times the impairment piece is unknown. Even, I mean, we've had some crashes that ultimately we still don't know who the driver was. So there's so many unknowns around the crash when they send it to us within hours of the crash that we get a lot of unknowns, but at least we know there was a fatal crash and we could track it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have to wait upwards of 90 days to get the actual full report.
and then, I mean, obviously in this year, there were still 5 at the end of the year, so 5 were, I take it, I guess it was such a bad accident that you couldn't tell.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, sometimes fire will destroy
Mhm.
any.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other things that feed into that. It could have been an ATV
Oh, yeah,
crash too, because some of us do have seat belts. So,
yeah,
Do crashes that are not fatalities?
oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this story map is actually talking about all crashes. It starts with fatalities, but if you roll down through.
Oh, there we go.
Fatal crashes aren't the only ones that occur. We collect all types of crashes as long as they're on a public highway. So property damage only crashes. We've got injury crashes. So those range from severe injury to a possible injury or just a maybe I'm hurt, my neck hurts. They get taken to the hospital.
And a highway is also a town road?
Yes. Yep. Public, open to the public
Okay.
for movement. Yep. So we break it down by who is crashing. So crashes by driver, operator, state. So this is where it comes into a lot of people are like, oh, it's all the out of staters that
Yeah.
are crashing.
Mhm.
It's not.
That's good to know. Center Festival. Did you see that?
So it's
People always think it's somebody else.
it's a lot of people from down south.
Yeah, right.
so we break that down just to kind of dispel some of the myths out there about that. Let me see. So there's a lot of text here too. So I encourage you to pop in here at some point if you want
That's
to
great.
do this.
Mm.
We have also talked about the gender, the age and the gender. So you can kind of take a peek. Obviously predominantly male, a little more than half are male, I should say. And then of the male drivers, you can look at what age groups they fall into. The largest age group is 65 plus in this.
Have you thought about, we had a bill a couple times about trying to restrict basically people that are over 75. And I remember that I thought we had some specific crash data about that age group showing that it wasn't any different.
Restricting them from driving,
Yeah, like
Okay.
making
Retest.
you
Oh,
have to retest.
retesting, okay.
Um, so not just saying that you can't drive, but that you have to pass the eye test and pass the driver's test again.
Mhm.
But do you just have it at 65 and over? Do you have it broken down at any age group older?
We can,
Okay.
It would be interesting to see the age versus the percentage of the population.
Yeah.
yes, normalize it to the
Yeah.
population, yeah. we
Normalize
talked
it to the
about that.
population, because, we very clearly take young males and drive their insurance rates up. And it does make it difficult for people starting out.
So speaking of insurance companies, they generally have really good data.
Yeah, they do.
Do they get it from you?
I don't think so.
No.
I think they're using other data sources.
Natural, probably.
It's interesting, the age of female drivers versus the age of male drivers, the over 60.
So the text on here does say that it was, I remember talking with my team about this. So they did normalize it to the percent of registered drivers of each sex. So data are for 2023 only.
Are there, let me see, I'm trying to read, are there more registered male drivers or female, or are they kind of
Yeah, I
Is that
don't
on there anywhere?
know, let's
Yeah.
see, volunteer crashes.
So,
Yeah, no, I don't see that, and that's something we can I can talk with them.
I'm trying to figure out how I explain to my wife that I've been wrong about, drivers all these rules.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, well,
but
honestly, your last,
but
yeah.
your wife has told us you've been wrong for a long.
And that is true.
No, generally, it used to be that men were, more worser.
Look at this.
So it says men were more likely to be killed or injured in a car crash.
Yeah.
Than women in 2023. So this is just 2023. Obviously, pull in more data and it's going to change those numbers a little bit, but
Wow.
72% of our drivers in fatal crashes or 72% of were male in fatal crashes. Wow. Sorry. That was hard for me.
We got what you meant.
Okay. Same thing and then for the injury crashes, again, normalized for registered drivers. But this is also going by age. Again, fatalities by age 65 was 65 and over was the higher number. We did have several years, the last few years, where older drivers were a high number in our fatal fatalities, in our fatal crashes.
And we don't know if that's. Do you have data on whose fault? You don't get into that.
We don't really get into it. We kind of just break it down by different groups. Yeah.
Right.
Does it say on there like, probably does, but I didn't get into it. There's probably a gap in the middle where the safest drivers lie. I would say from like 30 to 60.
I think it's a smaller gap,
Is
like
it
30
smaller
to
gap?
45-ish.
30
Yeah.
or 45.
Yeah. It's an interesting, like as soon as they start hitting that like 45, 50, things start to get a little, and it's amazing to me.
Interesting.
The eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's all.
Or overconfidence too. Yeah.
We've been doing it for a long time.
Do you advocate, or you let, well, I personally, I think we ought to be investing more in younger drivers or kids getting good what am I trying to say? Just driver's ed.
Yes.
I just think driver's ed should be more accessible to kids before they drive. And I think that does make a difference.
Yes, I agree.
So I don't know, we could use your data as a way to advocate for that.
The driver educators do use our data. We actually just last year built them a dashboard of crash data so that they can use that in the classrooms. One of my kids is currently in driver's ed, and she said that her teacher talks all the time about crashes and stuff. And she's like, I hear it so much at home. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's it is good to hear that they are talking to that safety aspect.
right.
You're right. Like the Vermont Highway Safety Alliance might be a good place to start. They do a lot of that type of work with driver educators. The Highway Safety Office works with the driver educators. I believe they do grants too, but that would be a question for them.
Yeah, I just
For
want
education.
the state to provide more driver's ed to kids who are learning how to drive.
Yeah.
That's something that we did talk about it a little bit, because it's not accessible to all of the kids.
Correct. Yeah. My oldest did not get driver's ed in high school,
Yeah.
so we had to pay for it, and that's not.
And go find it too.
And go find
Just wait till you're 18.
Or you wait till you're 18, and then, so we did, the strategic highway safety plan that I showed you earlier. We did at one point expand the young driver group to 25, because we were seeing that number, that 16 to 18 wasn't too bad, but then that 18 to 25 number was like a significantly higher number of crashes, because we were finding that people were not taking driver's ed and waiting.
So how many do you, is it motor vehicles that has, how many, young people don't take driver's ed?
I don't know. I don't know what that number is.
Anyway, yeah, the way, like, it would be interesting to see, like, when they issue a license, what percentage of those people have done driver's ed?
Right.
I believe they're collecting that again in that data, but I don't know. DMD would have to speak with you about that.
It's interesting because
Mhm.
doesn't even occur to me that somebody wouldn't take driver's ed.
There was a bill introduced at some point since I've been on this committee that it was going to require it for anybody under 21.
Yeah, and requiring it is important, but having access to it is just as important.
Yeah, because it's not. There is a pretty decent expense
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
You have to pay for it.
And conversely, my aunt lives in Maine and she lives in central Maine. And she started taking, the driver's test over yearly when she turned 85. She's now 92
Wow.
and she's passed the test every year.
Do they require it or just?
No, she just, it was such a hassle for her to take the license away from her father. That what she did is she started, taking it, and showing the results to her own kids.
Mhm. That's great.
And then, so, she, last month took the test and passed again. So, and she's 92, so, but she's done it every year since she was 85. So I wonder how many people do that.
Not too many.
I think your aunt is the only.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe if the insurance companies give you a discount, people might do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I do remember, years ago, somebody introduced a bill in House Transportation and Timmy Corcoran went nuts because he had a constituent who was complaining about that same thing in reverse. So it never went anywhere. It was a really hot topic.
To require the test for over a certain age. Yeah,
It was like over 70, I think.
Yeah.
maybe, or-
we talked about it here and Chair was over the age limit, so he wasn't too excited about it.
Well, granted, she didn't start till she was 85.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And then, but at 85, she started. She drove here from, maybe about 5 hours. And 2 years ago, get out of the car and she said, they put more corners in that road.
That's funny.
That's funny.
That's great though that they other state. Is she doing it on her own? Is she choosing to do it?
Yeah,
or
yeah,
is
you
it-
should
It's not a requirement. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if Maine had a
She
requirement.
waves it in front of my cousin Brian and my cousin Karen, and she waves it and says, here, see this?
Good for her. We should have her in.
No, she might tell stories about somebody on the committee.
Well, don't be sick.
that's what I owns a bar or restaurant. Yeah.
Or her son, and she works in the restaurant, breakfast place. And if you're bad the night before, she'll tell you.
That's cute. Field trip.
is the pedestrians, I know you had data in the handout about from 1 year, it was an increase.
Yeah.
But do you have longer term data? Because it seems, I
Yeah.
hear from constituents that they feel like there's been a trend, but maybe because there's one in their town and it's not like, oh my God.
So nationally, pedestrian, I'm sure you've heard nationally, pedestrian deaths are going up
Yeah,
significantly. Vermont has remained pretty steady, 5, 6, maybe 7 a year. We haven't had any change in Vermont like other states have, thankfully. But I don't know. Yeah,
they know why I'm at the national level.
I think.
Yeah, I was saying that.
Yeah, there was, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but there was, there's the distraction, there's speed, there's the size of vehicles. I'm sure there's lots of reasons I think we could point to that are are adding to all of it. There's more roads, there's more people, there's,
Right.
yeah. In a lot of those places that are having those issues do have an increasing population.
Right.
One thing Vermont doesn't have,
In the older.
yeah,
population better.
Yeah.
But we've also since I've done more about making the walkways safer and having the curb bump outs and
Yeah.
raised walkways and things like that, so. But maybe that just would have been worse had we not done that.
I think those are all great safety measures. What we also have is impairment in our pedestrians and bicyclists
Yeah.
sometimes. Some of them are crossing roads that at places they're not supposed to be. So that's an education. That's also,
Yeah,
there's other pieces to point to that we could maybe look at as well.
yeah, because you don't know, do you know where they were, like of the injuries of pedestrians, how many were in a crosswalk?
We can do that. We're actually working currently on building out that infrastructure data set. We've been working on that for a little while now. To find, we have some of that data where crosswalks are, but towns sometimes put them in and, as far as I know, we may not have that in our GIS layer.
And it's
So
not in the police report.
it is sometimes, yeah, we don't have a specific field for them to fill out for that, so we rely on them putting it in the narrative. So, yeah, sometimes that's a little more difficult to figure out, depending on where it is.
I working in this community and I work in Winooski, and both of those communities have ordinances that drivers have to stop.
Yeah,
And I've seen a lot of people, they walk out and they go to cross and people come too fast around the corner and it somewhat makes you wonder whether it's safer to do that or not,
right,
because you get people that are crossing that don't look,
Yeah, you get a little overconfident.
and they get overconfident. So it would be interesting to see data around that, whether that works or not.
right, okay. Yeah, I always try to make eye contact with the
Yeah.
driver.
Yeah, but
I don't feel like dying today.
It goes to our window tinting work that we did earlier.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's see
totally.
the driver.
Yeah,
Yeah, do people try to, sorry, I'm asking you questions. Do people want to tint their windshields? Or are
Well,
you
you
talking about
sometimes
the
on the side, you
Okay.
sometimes if you're in the crosswalk, you can't get into the windshield, but there are people that want to tint their windshields. Not a lot.
and pedestrians have phones now too, that they're just looking
Right.
at
Oh,
their
they're
phones.
also-
while they're
well, and drivers do.
I know, so that's a mess.
Right, you have to text the driver.
There's
I'm
actually,
crossing, slow down.
there's actually a pretty funny commercial about that. There's a guy, you know what I'm thinking of, he's, I forgot what the commercial is, but he's crossing the road, his car almost hits him, slams on the brakes and got one of those, and the guy with the phone, because he's like this, walking
Yeah.
across the street, he looks at the driver, he goes, like, I'm on the phone, you know? Yeah, it's crazy, it's funny as hell.
Yeah,
That's funny.
but it's a real thing.
Another breakdown, just vehicle types and crashes. So passenger van, we can look at pickup truck. So back to that size of vehicle, we can also break that down as well.
Oh, do you have like little
Motorcycle.
cars versus big cars?
So motorcycle is a good thing, 5% of vehicles, but 25%.
So one of my team members also, he just left for another job, but he was doing a lot of work around the VIN and figuring out, like, to your point, the passenger car versus the small or compact SUV versus a regular size SUV.
Yeah,
So we're still working on that, but like taking that VIN number, which has VIN, not number, the VIN to break that down a little more granularly.
and you got snowmobiles.
Yep. Yeah, as long as, if it happens on a public highway or public roadway, it will be counted in this data.
So if a tractor trailer hits a car, which category would you go
And
in?
both get counted.
They're both counted, right? So this wouldn't I don't believe this.
So if a tractor trailer being the problem or the cause of the
Right.
fatality
Yeah, this
of a
isn't-
person in a car.
Right,
This doesn't track causes, it just tracks. the
vehicle
accident.
types, yeah.
So if there's a tractor trailer hit a car, you need let's pull a car, the tractor trailer. And then-
And again, we just broke it down by injury type, so ATVs, 12% of ATVs, snowmobiles, off-road vehicles, vehicle crashes resulted in serious injury. So that's a number we came up with for this to kind of highlight those specific vehicles. Same thing with motorcycle crashes and serious injuries.
And pickup truck is interesting because I think,
Oops,
I thought
sorry.
when we looked at in the past, most popular registrations, pickup trucks are by far the more
Okay.
popular. So, but I don't know if that, maybe those were new registrations. I don't know. If total vehicles, I'm surprised by that data that the pickup trucks are so low, because my understanding is pickup, unless that's normalized by percentage or something, that's just a
Yeah.
number, right? Because
No, we
I
were,
would be,
we
but maybe
did,
that's why people want pickup trucks, they're safer.
maybe, it does say, since passenger cars made up 54% of all registered vehicles in Vermont, this is also surprising. So we did pull registration numbers. in
So
Vermont.
it is more.
Yeah, I thought there were more pickups also.
Unless there's a different, like there's, what are we calling passenger?
Well, I think the passenger car probably, and I would have to check with the team, but it would probably lump in the SUV group as well.
Not a truck, a small truck that has a bed in it, you wouldn't call that a passenger car.
No, probably not. It depends on what law enforcement marks it
It's
on our data, in our data as well. So,
We
also,
registered like a 150, the same as,
right, and so I wondered if they were considered passenger car.
right, that's,
Like a pickup truck is just the big truck.
yeah, I think there's still a pickup truck. If it's even if it's a
I mean, that's
small
what we
one, not
call
that we
them.
have a lot of those still, but.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Al.
Another one breaking down just occupant protection by fatalities and injuries.
Yeah, that was a good number, 11%. Are 11, what you guys said it better. Yeah, non-seatbelt users are 11%, but 54% of fatality.
Right.
Abilities.
We like to,
That's a good
I
number
didn't
to
know
help
that
people.
11%, all vehicles are all vehicles in a crash.
say that again,
They do 11% all vehicles in a crash are all users, so
front seat occupants. So
in a crash?
in crashes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not just like you're watching people try to see who's not.
That's a different study that the state highway safety office does do.
And it's not 11%.
No,
It's like 2%.
no, it's something around 89. I think last year it was 89 or 90% of front seat occupants were about to.
Worry about
If
it.
we
Yeah.
dip
so
below
right in,
5,
if 11%, it's right in the same
Right.
range.
So right, 89, 11.
Yep.
Yeah. So it must have been what it was. Thank you.
And we risk federal funds if we dip too low, right?
Correct.
85% or something.
But the number historically is that, our numbers are higher than a lot of places that have, mandatory.
Now mandatory typically pushes it up into that low to mid 90 range, I believe, in a lot of states, but yeah, I think.
But not all states,
Right.
we've actually done quite well versus the national numbers,
Right.
even though we aren't.
So that was the debate in here was we could do it, but we're only gonna get like 3% more, or was it gonna get huge?
Yeah.
Difference.
Yeah.
So how did they do that? They just have people standing on the corners looking into the cars and try to.
They do.
Not if they got tinted windows.
I don't, another reason.
Honestly, your car, we haven't talked about the data that the cars are
Mm.
Yeah.
gathering. They probably know if you have your seatbelt on the new ones. And they're telling somebody and then somebody can sell it, yeah.
Is it me or it really seems to me like people are driving faster.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, by far.
Mhm.
They're not getting picked up.
that,
yeah, there's little enforcement.
Right, and we had the big police come and give us numbers like this, but on arrests, and they're like quite down. Definitely during COVID, I don't know if they've picked up.
We broke it down by why, so we talked a little bit ago about lane departure. This is, some numbers on that, so 82% of our fatalities were the result of lane departure, meaning they either crossed center or they ran off the road, so the picture in the background is perfect, because we talked about hitting a tree, a single vehicle hitting a tree.
And how many of those are suicides,
Yeah.
which really does make it, yeah,
No way.
a lot of them are. I mean, it's just important to know that, that's one way, especially men, kill themselves.
Seems like
It's-
hard.
I'm not questioning you, but why would you say that? I mean,
Because that's what I've been told by cops. Because,
they.
that's a way to, you're by yourself on a road feeling unhappy.
Why else did you hit that tree?
You hit a tree, yeah.
Well,
No, it really is a
But if, because they like, how would we know if they wrote a suicide note?
I mean, people can kind of tell because
If it's bare roads and it's the middle of the day
Could've fallen
and you,
They were-
uh,
They were playing Candy Crush by their.
or they're on the phone and having a cigarette at the same time.
yeah, but
They just dropped something, they were like trying to do that.
So for fatal crashes, at least, the lane departure, 67% of them involve an impaired driver. And then another 34 were speeding or aggressive driving. So, those are also reasons why people are driving off the road and hitting trees or whatever around the sides of the roads. Cross center line.
Yes.
48% of those fatalities were from cross center line crashes. Those are always significant crashes. Let's see, impaired driving and speeding. Oops, scrolled too far. 79 and 36% respectively. So, our fatal cross center line crashes are heavily impaired driving, leading.
and it used to be that if you were impaired by alcohol, often you would drive slower. But I don't know if that's.
I don't know if that's true. And I can tell you that
That's what people that try to drive say. But yes, that's true.
Maybe it's cannabis that makes you drive slow. There's something that makes you drive slow. But anyway, so there's not is there an overlap in that
Yes.
aggressive? Okay.
oh yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so impaired driving and speeding could be
Well,
combined.
Yeah, okay.
And add in not wearing a seatbelt. There's some other things in there that we can be, as I've said to my colleagues sometimes, I'm like, it's like the trifecta. They've got, they're impaired, they're not wearing their belt, and they were speeding. Like that's
You're making bad decisions.
lots of
Rock and roll music attributes to speeding too. A good
Yeah.
song,
Yeah.
play a good
Yeah.
song, and all of a sudden, 185.
that's never happened to me.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like you're driving a GPO. Yeah.
75% of fatal crashes involve an impaired driver. So we just talked a little bit about that, but this was breaking it down again. It's very similar to,
Well, that male, female thing, did you guys see that? At the top,
yeah, males are more likely to drive impaired than females.
like a lot.
Wow.
And then in the age groups, again, we're looking at that 65 plus or that 30 to 39 age group. If we were to group the 30 to 49, that puts us at 40.
Yeah.
3%.
Yeah.
So, and again,
I'm surprised that high number of male impaired drivers are over 65. That's a pretty good number.
I think the
And well,
female
females, well, yeah.
impaired driving over 65 was 74%, which is just, I mean,
That's,
they,
but we
it's
don't know. the numbers.
11%, right?
Right, it could be a much smaller number, so the
Yeah.
percentages.
Well, it is a much
It is
smaller
much
number.
Right,
Yeah.
fatal crashes.
There are some interesting things that we can pull out of the data, as we,
100%? What's this?
fatal crashes with speeding.
And or aggressive or
Yes.
100% male?
Yes,
Is that in a particular year?
that was just this is all just
Okay.
2023 data.
Wow.
So breaking it
When
down.
does the 24 data come out?
We try to get everything in by the end of March. So that's accounting for, fatal crashes take up to 90 days for them to do the investigation and get the report in. So we try to get everything, all crashes in by the end of March. And so we just got that done. So we're gonna hopefully be doing a similar setup for 2024. Yeah.
So is that typical that stuff is 100% male? I mean, is that what you see in the other years?
That's an anomaly.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm trying to keep an open mind, but, you know.
I'd have to go back to our 2022 story map to look and see.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know if that's a normal or if it just happened to be 2023.
Okay.
You got the story maps going back.
We just did 2022 and 23. It was years ago when I didn't have a team of awesome analysts.
Yeah.
I was doing a little like crash facts book.
Right, or that little table, which I think is.
Yeah, well, I've been doing that for years too, but I did a crash facts book that we would pass out at like a Vermont Highway Safety Alliance conferences and stuff. But when I got some really cool
Yeah,
new people on board, they can do way cooler things than me. So
yeah.
they built these. So we're gonna do another one. I think. Whoops.
Yeah,
Need to touch
I just
that.
have a comment.
Sure.
I think these are great. I think they're really cool. But the part about applying makeup, I think that is something that doesn't happen that often. And I think especially since this is 100% male, to have that be the
That's
second
true.
thing.
Yep.
I think probably eating maybe
Mhm.
is a
Yeah.
big thing. So I would just suggest,
That's a good point.
Yeah,
because not that many
Well,
men
that's
use
only
makeup.
that's for in
Just in
general
general.
every year.
It is,
This year, like I said,
Yeah.
maybe you guys had a bad year.
or maybe guys are applying.
maybe I was,
I know, or applying makeup, but just,
I think it was
I
like an example of all the different things that people do, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen a
I
woman
actually,
putting makeup on, driving down the road. So
I think
I think-
brushed-
yeah, but it's
Probably
probably
the-
more of other things.
he was
It
brushing-
Yeah,
it
okay.
just seems
yeah, I agree.
not,
Yeah, we should probably
Right.
like
Not doing
gender
marketing, right.
neutral
Just sit there and see
that
it.
description a
Yeah.
little more. Yeah, I agree. So I'll mention that to the group. All right, see, weather conditions, just showing fatal and injury crashes. I didn't realize, I don't know how long
Snow
you guys
is-
had me for, but
small. No, this is really interesting.
Yeah,
Right.
I haven't seen these.
Look how small snow is and it's freezing rain, but people slow down when the
clear days.
clear days are the worst.
are tough. Yeah, clear and cloudy. So any day like today is more likely to have.
I run the risk of going home and getting without that, but when the tractor trailer truck goes by you on the interstate and you do the white out,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that it's like,
it's terrifying.
yes.
Yeah.
But how many people instinctively let off the gas
Yeah.
or hit the brake a little bit?
Well,
you know,
you have to let off the gas because they can't see
Yeah.
anything.
So it is like people will instinctively, I think, in a lot of ways, slow down.
Why is Chittenden so orange?
So what we did here was had this thing covering a little bit of the text, but so Chittenden County isn't surprising. The more vehicles on the road, the higher the chance crash occurring. So we did crash rates. So based on, I believe this is based on all crashes in that county. So you'll see our higher population counties here.
Of Lowell's not the higher population.
No, but they
No.
do have quite a few crashes over
Because-
that way. They've got Route 15.
1.33 too, higher than Addison, Windsor. Well, it's crashes per 100 million vehicles.
Yes, so it's our
Miles.
vehicle miles traveled.
Right, but there's actually a million, you guys,
It's It's a
Just a
traffic,
standard thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Lamoille's second in the state.
correct.
Oh, we can't see the southern state.
Yeah, I think if I can.
You can't see
scroll-
Wyndham, it's all covered up.
Right, well, no, but the word says that Lamoille was the second. But there's Wyndham.
So
This is crash rates. What was the other one?
this is fatal crash
Oh.
rate. So Rutland County has our highest.
Oh,
That's interesting. That doesn't,
Yes, sorry.
that's very interesting. We should let them know.
Wyndham is up there.
Wyndham and then Franklin, Orleans and Essex across the top are
Yeah.
more, some more rural areas. Again, I don't, other than in Franklin, there's no, or Orleans does have interstate as well, but very small amount of interstate up in that area too. Fatal crashes current all across the state, so we just, oh, and I can open the map too, I believe. If you wanted to see it closer, I think that's, it's just saying zoom in to see, but, showing some of the crashes, where the pedestrian, where the bicyclist crashes occur. So it's just a map.
The areas for Wyndham are not on the interstate. It's interesting. Those are our mountain areas.
Okay. So more the crashes.
Like the
Lower
windy
100.
Yeah, Route 30.
Yeah.
All right, last I think is when, so somebody asked about seasonality. So here's our talk on seasonality. Winter is the smallest for fatal crashes. Spring and summer are tied for 32%
there
apiece.
probably is more driving, more miles traveled than us.
Speeds are higher. Yeah,
But the all crashes is almost exactly.
yes,
That's pretty wild.
yeah. So our fatal crashes
Even-
are occurring in our nicer months, and all crashes. I mean, there's a little bit of everything going on in those. So, see, hour of day for fatal crashes.
Oh, what's up with 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The bars closed? Is that what?
10 o'clock?
Some of them, or restaurants
Yeah.
closed,
so
But that was 1 year.
Yeah.
Right.
but
Yes.
it's still pretty, yeah, it would be interesting to know if that's,
yeah, to do like a 5-year, like full analysis.
Right.
Yeah. Yep, so hour of day, again, it peaks at 4 PM in the all crashes. Those are those drive times, right? So in the morning, there's a peak, 7, 8, and then there's that second
Mhm.
peak when everybody's going home.
they're tired.
Mhm.
Just more cars.
So that is everything in here. We did put a bunch of other resources here. We've got the New England 511, we do have a public crash query tool. We put a link to our highway safety office and DriveWell Vermont. I'm sure you all have heard about it at this point. The Highway Safety Alliance I talked about, and then, and NHTSA. The last thing, just want to pop open, hopefully that changed, yes. So this is our website for our section. And I just showed you one of the many things, the 2022 showcase is here as well. We've got some other things, so in my section is also the traffic data group. So that's where the VMT, so we collect all the traffic numbers and come up with those numbers. We also have our public query tool here. We have a data request form. So now people can just request data through here or data, another link to the SHSP dashboard. So they showed you earlier. And we have a ton of dashboards and reports and things in here. There's maps in here if you're super curious about those. We do have a fatal crash dashboard. So this is, I believe, the newest, like 2025 breakdown. Nope, this is still 23. So again, breaking down fatal crashes. I know we talked quite a bit about that, but
There's the home state of the people.
so this is where you could look at by month too.
Okay.
Okay. So, oops.
Man, are you
Cool.
familiar with the program other states do. So I can't remember the name. It's kind of like the zero fatality program. It's like,
Vision Zero.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
That other states are doing it. That Vermont looked at what that would mean to adopt that. Or is it just kind of like, does it really matter? I mean, of course, nobody wants more fatalities.
Yeah, I'm trying to drag out of my memory and maybe I should just not say, I thought that we already had,
Okay.
but I don't remember, so. I'd have to look into that. We've done some analysis reports on some other roads, like 105. There's a dashboard for that, and then 22A and 105, there's some reports there. So
It-
love the tools if you wanna pop in here and poke around and look at different things.
And is it your section or is it a different? If you're not the safety council, like there's that group does. Kind of talks about the policy, they do the public education campaigns and things, is that right?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not part of that.
That's like an appointed. You know anything about the safety council?
No,
Because there is a safety council
okay.
that just works on highway safety, but I'm not sure. I think they're more like about. Public education campaign, like there was one of those,
Hmm.
how many drinks do you have before you're over the legal limit cars, things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. No.
Do you get a lot of hits on your, website?
I haven't
It looks
looked in a
cool.
while. Yeah, we've put a lot of work into it. I constantly have ideas for
Yeah.
more stuff. I didn't show it to you, but I did mention it. There's a driver's ed dashboard. It's also in there. So I know we talked a little bit about that, but if you wanted to see it.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw the title, so that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh.
Data's fun.
It is. I've been doing this for 25 years and it
Wow.
hasn't gotten old yet. So it's, yeah.
Well, thank you
Thank
very
you, yeah.
much for coming in.
Thank you
It was
all.
Very useful.
All right. Well, let me know if you need anything.
We know who to call.
You do.
Totally.
But you're not the